Well, while it was good news for the president last night in the successful raid in northwest Syria, eyes still remain on what is happening between Ukraine and Russia as Congress, Republican members of Congress, call for stronger actions and words from this administration. Joining us now to talk more about this, Callie Patteson with the New York Post. Callie, welcome to Washington Watch.
Hi, Tony. Thanks for having me.
So what's the latest we have on the situation in Ukraine?
So as you saw from the Pentagon briefing today, tensions are rising over in Ukraine and Russia. And kind of the latest of what we're seeing is NATO is warning that we could see up to 30,000 troops moving into Belarus. Now, this is very concerning as we've seen roughly 100,000 troops from Moscow surrounding Ukraine on its western border, Crimea, and now over into Belarus. Russia has said that they aren't planning an invasion, and Ukraine is also pushing a message of peace, telling people not to panic, and also urging Western nations not to panic as well. Now, the U.S. and other NATO allies, as we've seen, are trying to prepare, are trying to be as cautious as possible, and we've seen that through the U.S. sending roughly 3,000 troops over in Eastern Europe. Some of that were already stationed there, and some are coming from the U.S. And so right now, it's kind of a waiting game. The U.S. doesn't know if Putin has made a decision to invade or not, and it's all just kind of to see what they're going to do next.
With announcement that Vladimir Putin will be going to Beijing for the games, certainly is that a false signal that he might be sending to cause people to stand down, the possibility that he may take action in the next few days?
I mean, it's unclear. It's all Putin's game at this point. Last week, one of the Russian foreign ministers, he said that if it's down to Russia, they don't want war. But in the end, Russia doesn't like getting blown off. And this week, he said the U.S. ignored Russia's concerns when it comes to blocking Ukraine from NATO. And the U.S. is going to stand by NATO's open door policy. So we're going to have to see how this plays out over the next couple of days. But the growth of troops around Ukraine is concerning.
What's the latest on the sanctions bill that was making its way through the Senate? It was to be a bipartisan measure. Have they worked out the details of that yet?
So that's still being discussed. As you know, they were on recess last week. They weren't able to get through the Republican-backed sanctions bill, which would have placed sanctions on Russia within about 15 days of being approved, regardless if Russia had invaded or not. So we're going to see in the next coming weeks to see if we can get some progress with that sanctions bill. But there has been some decisions and discussions on where they're going to target, specifically some banks and companies and top officials in the Russian government are going to be targeted with these sanctions.
The issue that was kind of keeping Republicans and Democrats apart was the trigger. Were some of those sanctions to come now to try to discourage an invasion into Ukraine, where the Democrats were saying, well, we want to wait until they actually do it? Have they worked through that aspect?
So the Biden administration is still really pushing for diplomatic efforts to avert a potential invasion. And they're trying to get that as much as possible between Secretary Blinken and his counterpart in Russia. And so I think they're really hoping for these talks, and the U.S. has stepped back with some of its language in hopes that that will also put off an invasion. They were saying before that an invasion is imminent. They're no longer using that language, as it was sending this message that they knew what Putin had decided. And so I think that change of language goes to show that there is some collaboration happening to take a step back and hopefully stick with diplomatic measures.
Callie, any effect of what happened last night in northwest Syria, does that signal to Putin that the U.S. is serious?
I mean, they are two completely different issues. So we're just going to have to see if he has any response to that. I think right now we are still trying to work out some details on what happened on our own. And so until we can see everything out on the table, it's hard to tell.
Okay, very good. Callie, thanks so much for joining us with your insights on what's unfolding here.